flourless pies and tarts are made without using conventional wheat flour. And I started with the basics, making a raspberry clafoutis. So now that you're comfortable, you can take on the challenge of a flourless pear cranberry pie. I have 3 cups of sliced pear. And pears are naturally sweet, but what they lack is acidity. So the balance of 2 cups of fresh cranberries balances the sweetness and the tartness together. Now to sweeten it up, I'll start with 1.5 cups of sugar. I'm not going to add the sugar directly to the fruit because I want to stir all my other ingredients into the sugar, including 2 tablespoons of tapioca starch. This is an ingredient you see a lot when you're baking without flour. One of the pluses to using tapioca starch in the filling of a fruit pie, any fruit pie, is that it thickens evenly and quickly. For a little flavor, I'd like to add some orange zest. And also, I like to add a hint of allspice, just 1/4 teaspoon. In it goes. And the last ingredient I like to add, just a teaspoon of vanilla. So while I set that aside, I can start working on this flourless pie crust. When replacing wheat flour in a recipe, there are 3 components you have to consider. You need to replace the body of the wheat flour. You need to include a starch in your recipe. That lends set, and you need a protein in there that replaces the actual protein or gluten that's in the wheat flour. So for the body, I'm using brown rice flour, and it is simply finely ground brown rice. I'll measure 2 cups into my mixer. So tapioca starch is not just for the filling, it is also for the crust, a full 1/2 cup measure of it. 1/4 cup of sugar. Then I'll add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, then a quick mix to blend. And now for the butter and some cream cheese. I have 1 cup of each here. So I'll add them all at once before I start the mixer. So the last ingredient is 2 egg whites. And I'll just whisk these lightly, just until they're foamy, so they incorporate quickly and easily into the pie crust. And there we go. It looks like a wheat flour pie dough, but there's not a stitch of gluten in it. And shape this into 2 discs. 1 disc is for the bottom of the pear cranberry pie, the other for the top. Now, in working the butter and cream cheese into the pie dough itself, it's now softened up, so it's a little difficult to roll. So now I'll pop these in the fridge to cool for about an hour. I have a full recipe of the pie dough already chilled, so now I'm ready to roll. I'll start by rolling the bottom pastry. Just a little rice flour, and I sprinkle it on both sides of the pastry. So I have a sheet of parchment beneath and on top. To avoid cracking, you want to roll with small, gentle motions. And there we go. Now for my pie, I have a standard 9-inch pie plate. Another advantage to rolling the pastry between the parchment is you can use the parchment to lift and then line your pie shell. And there we go, not a single crack. Now I'll roll the top pastry in exactly the same way. All right, now to fill the pie with the pear cranberry filling. This looks like a lot of filling, but as it bakes, it cooks down and sets into place. Over goes the top and lift it off. And I simply use a paring knife to run around the outside of the pie plate and trim off the excess edges. And then I'll just use a fork to cinch the edges together. To allow the steam to escape as the pears and cranberries are baking, I just use scissors, make a few cuts on the top of the pie shell. The final touch, an egg whisked with a couple tablespoons of water. And this egg wash, I brush all over because this adds a beautiful shine, promotes an even browning. And now this is ready for the oven. A high temperature oven, 375. And it takes about 50 minutes for the pie to be evenly browned and that fruit to be bubbling. Oh, this is gorgeous. You want to let your pie cool completely, so I have one that is already baked and cooled down. Ooh, look at the tenderness and the flakiness. Look at the gorgeous fruit filling. Love how the color